Hi everyone, I'm going to continue reading Runaway Ralph. Garf caught a mouse in his butterfly net, explained Aunt Jill. He wants to keep it. In a butterfly net? The girls found this feat funny. Let me see, they begged. And Ralph found himself being poked out of the net and into the cage. The door was closed behind him and fastened. He scurried behind the exercise wheel where he sat trembling, partly from fright and partly from relief at being safe from the cat. "Oh, isn't he darling?" cried the girls, their faces large and close to the cage bars. "Isn't he sweet? Oh, those tiny little ears. Look at those itsy bitsy paws." Ralph looked for help toward the boy, who had stepped aside and now stood scowling beside the screen door. "Aunt Jill, can we feed the mouse?" begged the girls. "Please let us feed him." And Ralph turned his back and curled up into the smallest possible ball. "Oh, the mouse belongs to Garfield," said Aunt Jill. "He gets to feed his own mouse. Skip it." Ralph thought Garf sounded angry. He heard the boy's footsteps leave the craft shop and the screen door screech and slam as it opened and closed. "What's the matter with him?" asked one of the girls, who sounded as if she really didn't care. "Girls, do you know what I think we should do?" asked Aunt Jill. "I think we should all help Garfield enjoy camp. This is his first time away from home and he doesn't know anybody here. I think he's lonely." "But he's mean," protested the girl with the sunburned nose. "He just stays off all by himself." "Well, there's nothing mean about that," Aunt Jill pointed out. "I know," admitted the girl, "but I don't know. Anyway, Garf is a funny name." "Well, maybe he doesn't think so," said Aunt Jill. Ralph could feel one of the girls trying to poke her fingers through the bars of his cage. "At meals he won't talk or sing," she said, jabbing Ralph with a stick. "He just eats and then he gets up and he just walks out." Ralph tried to draw himself into a tighter ball. "See, he's outside just standing there," said another girl. "He practically never talks to anybody." Aunt Jill lifted Ralph's cage up onto a shelf in the corner near a window. "Catching a mouse in a butterfly net is certainly doing something," she remarked. "I think Garf should take care of the mouse." Ralph made up his mind not to budge. If he stayed perfectly still, sooner or later they would all go away and let him enjoy some peace and quiet in his nice, safe cage. Then maybe Garf would come back. He might even think of bringing a corner of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Then Ralph would simply explain to Garf that he needed to get out of the cage, because he had to take care of his motorcycle. He was quite sure Garf would understand, for he looked like the kind of boy who was interested in speed and motorcycles and who would know how to make a miniature motorcycle go. All right, friends, that's the end of Chapter 3. We're going to start Chapter 4, and the name of Chapter 4 is called Chum. Dun, dun, dun. Chapter 4. When Ralph awoke, the camp was dark. Crickets chirped in the weeds outside the craft shop. In the distance, frogs croaked, were suddenly silent, and croaked again. Timidly, Ralph began to investigate his new home. Someone had supplied him with food and water. A piece of paper had been dropped thoughtfully into one corner. Knowing that he was safe from the cat, Ralph nibbled at some dried corn and a lettuce leaf until his stomach was full. Then he shredded the paper, which was somewhat harder to chew than the Kleenex he had enjoyed at the Mountain View Inn, and spread it around his cage before he summoned enough courage to explore his exercise wheel. Ralph climbed cautiously onto the wheel, which swung back and forth so alarmingly that he jumped off. He ran around his cage examining the wheel from every angle. Deciding that the worst thing that could happen to him was falling off, Ralph tried again. This time he stayed on the wheel, and when he became accustomed to the swinging motion, he tried a few cautious steps. The wheel spun pleasantly beneath his feet. Ralph ran faster. The wheel increased its speed. Ralph raced as hard as he could run and then stopped. And to his astonishment, the wheel continued to spin, and Ralph was carried completely around the circle, so that for an instant before he began his descent, he was upside down at the top of the wheel. This ride was fun. When Ralph had coasted to a stop, he began to run again so that he could spin around the full circle once more. Round and round went Ralph as the shadows in the craft shop faded. Spinning on a wheel was as dangerous and as exciting as riding a motorcycle. His motorcycle! Ralph leaped from the wheel to the side of the cage nearest the window. The rays of the rising sun slanted through the bamboo, but no matter how hard Ralph strained his eyes, he could not catch even a glimpse of chrome or of the red metal. If only he had some way of knowing his motorcycle was still hidden beneath the bamboo husk. An alarm clock went off in a lodge nearby, and a boy in rumpled-up pajamas stumbled out to blow the rousing bugle notes that brought the camp to life. Ralph busied himself scattering his shredded paper about his cage, nibbling his food, and racing on his wheel. While the campers were in the dining hall eating breakfast, Garf slipped into the craft shop. He checked on Ralph's food and water and slipped out again so quickly that Ralph only had begun to summon the courage to speak. "Well, that's funny," thought Ralph. "The boy acts as if he's doing something wrong." After breakfast, Aunt Jill and several boys and girls straggled into the craft shop and settled down to make pictures by gluing dried rice, peas, beans, and corn to scraps of plywood. Mosaics, they called them. Such a waste of good food, thought Ralph, recalling some of the hard times he had gone through with his family back at the Mountain View Inn. Those campers were ruining enough food to keep a mouse family healthy for weeks. Before long, the mosaic makers discovered Ralph, who obliged them by racing on his wheel. "Oh, hey, look at him in the loop-de-loop," said a boy named Pete. "Isn't he darling?" cried a girl. Apparently, all girls called mice, at least mice in cages, darling. Ralph could not resist showing off by looping the loop once more, and when many hands pushed bits of the mosaics into his cage, he nibbled on them greedily. At least there was no scourging at Happy Acres Camp. The next time Garf slipped into the craft shop while everyone else was in the dining hall, Ralph gathered his courage to speak. "Say," he began in a timid voice, but the boy must not have heard him, because at that moment he began to sing uncertainly to himself. "Little rabbit, frou, frou, hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on the head." Ralph was stunned by the words Garf sang. What kind of boy would sing such a wicked song? Certainly not a boy a mouse could trust. Frightened and disappointed, he scuttled to the furthest corner of his cage, and he turned his back. Down came the good fairy, and she said, "Little rabbit, frou, frou, I don't want you hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and banging them on the head." As Ralph sat trembling in his corner, he listened, and he was puzzled. Garf with obvious pleasure, was singing the same words the campers were singing in the dining hall, but the tune was a little different. When their voices went up, Garf's went down. When their voices went down, Garf's went up. Sometimes his voice did neither, but wavered someplace in the middle. Ralph was bitterly disappointed by the whole turn of events. Garf was not interested in speed and motorcycles. He was interested in singing and in banging field mice on the head. Okay, friends, that's where we are going to end today. I hope you guys have a good day, and we will keep reading tomorrow. And we're in the middle of chapter 4. Chum, done, done, done.